In this video I'm trying to explain why lag compensation exists and how it affects your game. Every online game works with a server, and to this server many people connect with their computer. And between all players and the server is always a communication. This communication always takes time. It takes the time of your ping. This means if I start moving on my computer, it doesn't mean that I have started moving on the server's perspective. I start moving on the server after the time of my ping. After my moving command has reached the server, it again takes the enemy's ping until I start moving on the enemy's perspective. The difference between my location, the server location, and the enemy's location is calculated by two factors. The first one is, of course, my ping. So if I decrease the ping to a more realistic number, you can see that the difference is shrinking. However, it is also affected by the movement speed that you have. So if I increase the movement speed right here, you see that the difference is becoming to grow again. The difference between our positions doesn't only affect my movement, it also affects the enemy's movement. As you can see here, this is the enemy's perspective. He's running around. This is what I see on my screen. He has not started moving yet. On the server's perspective, he has moved. But if we are both moving, there can be a very high difference between what I see, what the server sees, and what my enemy is seeing. This is what I see, this is what the server sees, and this is what my enemy sees. If I'm playing an online shooter game, I would now try to shoot on the enemy I see. However, what I see does not represent what the server sees. So if I shoot on the after image that I see, all my shots would miss. When it comes to collusion and hit recognition, what happens on the server is always the important thing. The server is always the boss. And for this reason there is lag compensation. Lag compensation allows me to shoot on the after image I see right here and still deal damage to the enemy so I can hit him. Now I want to look with you at an example I've just experienced in my online game. So here's the clip. You can see that I'm fighting the other scout and I'm losing. Let's look again at this clip, but this time with the eyes of our lag compensation. So I'm trying to pause the video right here. As you can see, the enemy scout is shooting before me. Yes, you could argue that my reaction time is very bad, but let's recreate this scene in our simulation. This is what the enemy sees. On the enemy screen, he is already around the corner. He can see me and he can shoot me. However, on my screen, he has not passed the corner yet because I see the past of the enemy. And this is the reason why the enemy could shoot first. And since the enemy is seeing me before I see him, he can shoot first. This is often called the peeker's advantage. Let's look again at the scene. And as you can see right here, the enemy scout is clearly missing his shot. Yet I still got hit by that. I did a sidestep, but it had no effect. So let's try to recreate the scene on my simulation. This is what my enemy sees, and he is shooting on my after image. This is what I see. On my screen, I already did my sidestep, I dodged his bullets. But on his screen, he's shooting the one who has not made a sidestep yet. Lag compensation has also downsides. Now I want to create another scene in which I am running away from the enemy. On my perspective, the enemy is very far away. He could never reach me with a melee attack. However, on his screen, he is very close to me. He could hit me with a melee attack. So let's recreate the scene in game. The enemy scout is slowly going towards me, and remember when he's about to hit me, it was very late, he was very close to me. If I'm running away from the enemy scout, he is able to hit me from a much larger distance as before. This is also the reason why the enemy's Demon Knight is always getting you. Because he has high speed and he is always closer to you if you are running away. Now we are looking at the next example of melee combat. This time, me and my enemy are walking against each other. So now the big question is, at which point will we collide? At which point will we stop? On my perspective, we are colliding right here. On the server's perspective, we are colliding right here. And on the enemy's perspective, we are colliding right here. So where do we stop? When it comes to collision, the server is always the boss. So we will stop here. The problem is, on my screen, I have already passed this point. So this means that I have to be dragged back on my screen to reach the server's collision point. So let's look at an example. This becomes even more visible if you keep running against each other. In Team Fortress there is a charge ability for the Demo Man. This charge ability increases your movement speed by a lot. When it comes to lag compensation, high movement speed is always a problem. So in this example I have increased the movement speed. And the higher the movement speed is, the more I will be dragged back because our positions are very far apart. And being dragged back mid-game with very high speed can be very annoying. Fortress, there's a code which prevents you from being dragged back as long as you charged in a straight line. So let's look at this example. As you can see, at the last moment of charging, I stop, although I could still go forward. So the code predicts where the collision point will be, and at the moment I reach this point, on my perspective, I just stop. So I will not be dragged back. This code only works if you are charging in a straight line against each other. If you are charging sideways, this will not work. Let's see this example. I did not stop my charge, I kept moving forward because the server did not see any collision. So let's recreate the scene in our simulation. On my perspective, I am charging against this after image. However, on the server perspective, there is no collision, I still can move forward. And that's the reason why I didn't stop my charge. So my last point for this video is that there is not only a difference between locations, there's also a difference between rotation. So as you can see right here, the rotation that my enemy sees of me is not the rotation that I truly have. At this example right here, I'm asking my friend to keep his crosshair onto my body, the way I do on his right now. As you can see, he's always looking to the right, because his rotation is lagging behind. As a spy, this gives me a huge advantage, because his back is always exposed to me. Thank you for watching. I hope that you now have understood how lag compensation works and how it affects your game.